So look, we've got an amazing event for you today. Again, as you would expect, in terms of like 3 incredible guest speakers. We're going to be talking menopause, we're going to be talking creative well-being, and we're going to be talking OCD. And then our 5-minute wonder today is the incredible Emma Palmer. Emma, give us a wave. Who's doing an awesome challenge for an amazing charity. So she's going to be kind of talking to you about that a bit later on during the webinar. Just, I guess, some kind of housekeeping rules. Again, just making sure that there's no background noise. So if you're not actually speaking, if you could just make sure that you are on mute, that would be amazing. Obviously, let yourselves be known to each other. Put your LinkedIn profiles into the chat feed. Get connected with each other. Take those relationships off of this kind of platform and into your everyday lives. We truly are a lover of making awesome introductions. We've actually got a fun breakout room for you today. So, but it does mean that you're going to need a couple of tools, simple ones, but a pen and a piece of paper, or anything, pen, pencil, crayon, Crayola, whatever you so wish. So if you can get that ready, that'd be amazing. So that when we start the breakout room, you're good to go. And I guess just before we kind of get Shaun in, is there's a few kind of awareness days kind of coming up. So September the 10th, it's World Suicide Prevention Day. We've got an incredible relationship with Ripple. There's obviously a huge amount of people that do incredible things around suicide prevention. So if your business hasn't kind of started looking at it and you want some information or you'd like some inspiration at all, then please do let us know, and we're happy to make some introductions to you. It's Deaf Awareness Month, so we've also got kind of Science Solutions, who are an incredible partner of ours. So again, if you want some tips, if you want to know how you can be more deaf aware as an organisation, then again, please let us know. It's World Alzheimer's Month, and also 25th of September to the 1st of October is National Inclusion Week, and the theme this year is kind of take action, make impact. So get thinking about what you as an organisation, what you as an individual can kind of do to contribute towards that week. But again, any inspiration that you want, we can certainly make an introduction to you. Fiona, I had the pleasure of kind of, I guess, getting to know kind of Matt, who's Fiona's husband, and we did an ultra marathon together. It was the first time we'd ever met, and we did an ultra marathon, and absolutely incredible. And I think creative well-being, getting employees to think about things in a different way from their own well-being perspective, and also bringing things together. It's incredible what she does. So Fiona, for the next 10, 12 minutes or so, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I was banking on a bit more time to get into the zone. Thanks, Shaun, stitching me up. So let me just share my screen. Hi everybody, I am Fiona and I am the founder of the Creative Wellbeing Company. So I just wanted to share with you today my story and how I came to set up the Creative Wellbeing Company, and how creativity, how I've used creativity to support my mental health. So I've got about the last 5 years of my life to fit in the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to try and be really quick. But just to give you a little bit of a background about me, I used to work for a publishing company. So I used to work for some of the UK's leading craft magazines, and I used to design the cover mounts that you'd get on the front of a craft magazine. So anything from card making kits, sewing kits, crochet kits, anything like that, I used to create. So sort of from product development to sourcing and logistics. And I absolutely loved my job. It was creative every single day, and I got to have meetings about how we should pose a little set of penguins in the snow. It was just a fantastic job. So in 2019 I had my daughter Dorothy, who obviously loved pieces, but I think I really struggled with that transition from being a working full-time to being a full-time mum. I found it, I'm sure so many parents on here can relate. It was so difficult to go from, quite a busy, full-on job to then just being at home with the baby. And then within 6 months of her being born, it was lockdown. And I know that so many of you can relate to those sort of feelings of isolation. But for me, it was not having the connection with other mums or, family to support, and just feeling really isolated. It was quite difficult. So I got to a point where I was ready to go back to work, and I was ready to progress even further with my career. And I started talking to my manager about coming back, and I was basically told that my job wasn't there for me anymore. I was given a new role, which was something that I didn't want, something that I had no interest in, and no experience in doing. But I was told that because it was a more senior role, that I actually wasn't entitled to redundancy, which is something that I had pushed for. So I spent weeks trying to negotiate with my manager to try and sort something out. But essentially, I had to take the role because I had to pay the bills and support my family. But it really felt like I was out of control over that part of my life. And I think when you have a baby anyway, you get this huge lack of identity. And then, for me, my job was a huge part of that identity, so it just felt like that I had completely sort of lost sight of myself and who I was. And I think returning from maternity anyway is quite difficult for most people. But to come back into a whole new working from home environment, and in a role that I didn't want to be doing, was quite difficult. So quite soon after returning to work, things sort of went downhill. I fell into low mood and depression, and for me, it kind of came out into negative self-talk. So, it came out in like negative self-talk and feelings of I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And eventually it sort of culminated. It got worse progressively into everybody at work must be talking about me, everybody's laughing about me, I'm a bad wife, I'm a bad mum. And kind of eventually it got into if I hadn't have had Dorothy, I'd still be happy, which is a really awful thing to think. And sort of the anger that came from that, sort of anger that I've never experienced before. And for me, it came out in, it was hard to explain, but it was very loud in my head. So this negative self-talk got louder and louder and louder, to the point where I struggled to function. I would sit on the sofa and not be able to hold conversations with my husband because these voices just got louder and louder and louder and all-consuming. I remember trying to have conversations with Matthew and not being able to communicate because I just couldn't turn the volume down, I suppose. So it was around this time that I started doing calligraphy. So I signed up to do an online calligraphy course. And the first night I did it, I put Dottie to bed, I sat down at the dining room table and did calligraphy for about 2 hours. And I don't know if anybody's ever done calligraphy, but I think it's that concentration of doing those brush strokes and getting completely in the flow and zoning out was just unbelievable from that first night of me doing it. I think it was the first night in months that I hadn't sat on the sofa and cried in an evening, that I actually got like a bit of peace where, I wasn't, I didn't have this self-talk going on in my head, and I was just completely consumed by what I was doing. So that was it then. Every night for the next few weeks, I would put Dottie to bed and I would sit at the dining room table and I would do calligraphy. And the transformation was just unbelievable. It was, it happened so quickly. It was amazing. Just to give myself a bit of distraction and breathing space from everything that was going on in my brain. So it was here that I really thought, what is it that I can be doing if creativity helped me in such a short amount of time? How can it help other people? So I ended up getting a bit of legal advice and leaving my work. And so eventually I was signed off with depression. And yes, I managed to leave work, thankfully. So I basically spent the rest of my lockdown playing with Dottie. So going from doing cover mounts, my next logical step felt like creating craft kits for children, all around different elements of gratitude and playfulness and happiness and positivity. I basically spent that time playing, and I really think that is what contributed to me getting better. And I look back now and I'm thankful for that time with her and the time to sort of allow myself to get better. It was really, I'm really thankful for that now. So I started selling these kits on Etsy, but it kind of wasn't really a long-term plan. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Etsy. It's a very saturated marketplace. So I started to think how else I could grow this into a business. So some of you might know my husband Matthew from Outliers Wellbeing. So we got speaking, and it just felt like a really logical step that I should go into businesses and support businesses with creativity, and helping people find a little bit of headspace through creativity to support their mental health. So a couple of years ago, I launched the Creative Wellbeing Company. So it's why sort of creativity for me, that's a really important topic that I want to explore. And yes, this picture is Dorothy drawing all over our kitchen floor, which is great. But I think that creativity is a really important skill for us all to have, and for businesses to have within their teams. So one thing that I hear a lot whenever I start a session, so every session I start, is I'm not creative, I'm not good at art, I can't do this. I think a lot of people feel like art or creativity isn't for them, and it's just simply not true. I think creativity is in us all. It's just, I think we forget how to express ourselves. So I think, when we start school, or when I see Dottie playing, classic example of her, in this photo, Dottie, all children, they colour outside the lines. They are curious and adventurous and, making time for play. They're not afraid of failure or making mistakes. And I think we lose that over time. So we start at school, and perhaps we're not given good grades at school for our art, which I really struggle with the whole concept of grading art, because I feel like it's a form of creative expression that shouldn't be graded. We then we go into a professional space, and we potentially follow corporate guidelines. And I feel like life kind of rounds those edges off, and we're not encouraged to be creative or express ourselves creatively, and we lose that skill over time. So I think what I'm trying to do at the Creative Wellbeing Company is really champion people making time for play, for businesses encouraging a safe space where people can feel comfortable to make mistakes, colour outside the lines, be a bit more toddler, and make time for play and expression, which I think is ultimately going to, get the best out of people and help businesses continue to grow. So at the Creative Wellbeing Company, we explore different topics around culture and values and belonging and purpose, but all through creativity. So it could be that we are exploring things like your why, and then bringing it to life using clay, which is a really fun one. Or like Ella's Kitchen, we explored the magical ingredients that make Ella's Kitchen such a great place to work. And we saw, everybody in that team, from the CEO to a junior member of staff, actually creating with their hands the culture of their business. We get people to think about their superpowers, or getting people to think about their emotions and expressing that through paintings and bringing it all together as a team to demonstrate how different emotions are layered within a team. So yeah, there's a whole host of things we do. But I just wanted to sort of get you thinking about creativity and how you use creativity in your life at the moment. So in your breakout groups, I want you to think about how you potentially spark creativity within your team, within your business, and how you do it in your personal life. And remember that creativity isn't just art or craft like I've spoken about, but it could be gardening or singing or dancing. There are so many different forms of creativity. And as well, Paul mentioned that I wanted you all to have a piece of paper and pen. So I'm going to ask you all to do a little creative activity. So I'd like you to do a continuous line drawing. So I want you to, when you get into breakout groups, to pick another member of your team, and you don't have to say who they are. And I'd like you to sort of look at them and keep your pen on your paper and draw that person without looking at your paper and without lifting your pen off your paper. So it's supposed to be a continuous line drawing of them to sort of get you to think about that person and connecting with that person. It's supposed to be a bit of fun. If it feels a bit too intense, then obviously absolutely no pressure to do it at all. But yeah, hopefully it's just a little bit of fun to get you talking while you're talking about this topic.
Amazing. Thank you. And well done also for hopping on at very short notice.
It's okay.
I do really, really appreciate it. And also showing the kind of the sheer vulnerability, I think, which I think we're really good at in kind of this group, within this community. Is it would have been so easy for you to have gone straight into, here is my business, without kind of giving the backstory to kind of how you got there, which is, I think, so important. We're actually going to go to the breakout room after we've spoken to Shaun. But I do think that we all probably want to be more toddler. We all want to be more childlike. At some point, we lose kind of those inhibitions. We lose that willingness and that curiosity. And yet we've all got busy lives, we're in busy jobs. It is stressful. There's so much going on that makes things kind of really build up. And I think actually giving yourself the time and the space to say something, actually something as simple as creativity, can have that can make the world of difference to your own mental health, which I guess is what we're all here for, right? We all want to kind of be mentally well. But I gave an incredible introduction, obviously, to Shaun, and then he absolutely just didn't turn up. But it turns out he's had surgery. He went to the toilet and he was hobbling back, but he just didn't make it in time. So I'll do the intro again. But Shaun is somebody that I've known for a while. Had the pleasure of filming with him. TEDx speaker, Jack creator. He has an incredible story and journey that he's gone through. And he's going to just kind of talk to you about that kind of now. So Shaun, for the next 10-12 minutes, mate, the virtual floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry about the fact I didn't turn up after my introduction. I've had ACL reconstruction on my right knee, and it's been only about 2 weeks. So everything I do just takes forever to walk, to move, to use crutches. But yeah, no, thank you for the introduction so much, Paul. Where do I begin? I suppose a lot of my story, it's I would say, looking back, it's quite interesting, but also quite sad in some ways. But I'll start from where it all began. After a couple of relationships and so much more, I started to get really anxious about this idea that I always had it contracted something from somebody. I always believed that I was ill, so I kept going back to the clinic or to the hospital over and over again, repetitively. And I'll cancel all my plans in the day, and I'll just be like, I need to go and find the answer. I need to go and find the answer. My anxiety was just constantly at an all-time high. And I just thought this was normal behavior. I thought what I was doing was being a diligent citizen of society, just making sure that I'm always okay. And then eventually that kind of passed. But I knew when it got really bad, my anxiety, when I paid £300 for a same-day sexual health test. And I realized, whoa, there's something not quite right here, but I couldn't put it into words. So then what happened after that was that passed. And then my fear migrated onto this idea that I suddenly out of nowhere had contracted HIV. And if anyone knows what anxiety is like, anxiety will make you do all sorts of things in the pursuit of an answer. And I don't like needles at all. For the last 2 weeks, I've had to have needles every single day to prevent DVT, but I got blood test taken to prove I didn't have HIV. So then after that, I had a dream. And I woke up in this dream. I just saw the back of a guy, and I just woke up with this new 100% conviction that I had suddenly overnight changed my sexuality and I no longer knew who I was. So at the time I was modeling, and I was around a lot of people that made me question even more of who I was. But I just lived with these thoughts for about 2 to 3 years. I couldn't stop obsessing over the idea that I potentially had become gay. And if I could see a guy that was good looking, or it had a good physique, in my head I'd be like, well, that makes you gay, that makes you this. It was just constant, repetitive, over and over and over and over again. But I just learned to live with it. I didn't see a life outside of it. And then what happened was, I was with one of my female friends, and the thought of sexual assault had popped into my head, and I just had a really big panic attack and breakdown. I was so terrified that I must have somehow been hearing voices. I was terrified that what was going on in my head, I was out of control. So I screamed at her to leave. And when I tried to sleep, I just saw images of blood and all sorts in my head. So I called the ambulance, and then suddenly I was okay. The panic had kind of stopped, and the mental health team came to check for me. And I said, no, I'll be fine. I'll just start therapy. So I started therapy. And then when I started therapy, it was made worse, really and truly, because I started seeing a psychodynamic therapist. And what happened after that was, suddenly out of nowhere, I started having suicide thoughts. And again, I believed whatever I had in my head meant that's what I was going to do in the real world. So I had a big breakdown. I went home and I called all my friends and I told them I'm depressed and I no longer want to be alive. And my friends, they were really upset and really distraught, because typically I'm the guy in the friendship group that everybody comes to for support, and they ask me for my advice on things. So they didn't really know how to help me. So what happened after that was, for the next couple of weeks, I just didn't do anything. Time was my enemy, I think is the best way to put it. I woke up and there were many mornings when I just said, I'm still alive. God damn, how do I still have to keep going on with this suffering? And I'd go downstairs, lay on my sofa, and just watch time go by. I didn't do anything. I could barely eat. I could barely sleep. I just didn't want to be here anymore. And it was last year, Saturday, the 4th of June. I woke up and I just said, I can't do this anymore. So what happened was, I called the NHS and I said to them, I believe I'm suffering from OCD. They suggested to me a book called Breakthrough from OCD, but I don't know if anyone's ever had a mental breakdown, but you're not in a space to absorb any sort of information. You really struggle. So I downloaded the book, but I couldn't read it. I just didn't want to do anything. And then I found this therapist online. I just said, let me just take a shot. And I just begged her for a phone call. And I told her, I'm having such thoughts. Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? She was like, and then she called me. And when she called me, I just broke down in absolute tears. Probably I cried on that day, probably the most I've ever cried in my entire 29 years of my existence. And I just said to her, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why am I having these thoughts? Am I going to become this kind of person? She said, Shaun, you have OCD. And we begun therapy the following Monday. And for around 5 to 6 sessions, all I did was cry for about 2 hours. I just no longer wanted to be here. But she gave me hope when I had no hope. And she gave me a lifeline when I had no lifeline. And I started to really I didn't get my life back together there and then, but I still was struggling because I didn't understand what OCD was. I had grown up with this idea that OCD was about cleaning because of shows such as Scrubs or Monk or Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners on Channel 4. And I woke up one day and I had the fear again that I was somehow overnight had changed my personality, become bipolar, BPD, schizophrenic, whatever it was. And I just quite literally just said to myself, I'm going to go and change the world. So I went downstairs onto my laptop and I opened up my Google Documents and I just wrote my story. That was it. I just started writing everything that was happening. And then I bothered absolutely everybody I could find, from magazines, newspapers, and some people started to bite onto it. And I released my first ever article with the Book of Man. And when I released the story, I was terrified at first because I was like, shoot, people are going to judge me. And then when I released the story, so many people I knew reached out to me and said they also have OCD as well. And I was like, wow, it really and truly isn't only me, because I thought it was only me, especially living with this kind of disorder where you're kind of stuck with your own brain. And sometimes it can feel like you're in your own personal hell. And during this year, OCD wasn't the only thing that actually happened to me. So the OCD diagnosis was one thing. I then tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus, and fractured my right leg in football. So someone ran into my knee and my knee just completely wedged and snapped, basically. Then I ended up for 3 days in hospital with pneumonia. Then my auntie died. Then my cousin, unfortunately, was murdered. He was found kidnapped. He had been kidnapped and put into a boot and shot, which was quite disturbing for the whole family. Then my other auntie died. And then my half-brother died, a half-brother that I'd been searching for a very long time. So it was a lot of trauma, a lot of grief. And now we're on to this year. And earlier this year, unfortunately, one of my aunties, she passed with terminal cancer. And that was kind of a big wake-up call in my life, I suppose, to look around at the people in my life and really appreciate them on top of everything that happened. And then 2 weeks ago, I had my knee surgery. So I'm still going through a lot of physical and emotional and mental change. But a lot of my story, I suppose, is about crying not to give up, but crying to keep going. And I think a lot of what I try to do is to really increase awareness about OCD and have conversations with people about it, because we just still have a really deep misunderstanding on a lot of these illnesses. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say apart from that, but yeah, thank you.
Firstly, thank you ever so much for kind of showing, again, as I said to kind of Fiona, the vulnerability, but also the honesty. I know that when you and I got to kind of to know each other during the question creation for Jack, which, by the way, anyone can go onto the jack.org site and go and ask Shaun. I think we probably did 120 questions, mate, during that day. So what was it like during diagnosis, afterwards, coping strategies, all of these different things? You can go and ask Shaun those questions. But I think what it does show is, I've seen a couple of messages in kind of the chat feed, is the power of storytelling is absolutely massive, because you have no idea what other people are also going through. And sometimes that reassurance or the inspiration or the empowerment that can give, but it takes somebody strong. It takes somebody like yourself to kind of share those stories first. Yeah, and that's why I love everything about this kind of this community, this togetherness. Not one of us is perfect, that's for sure. But by kind of you doing this, if it gets somebody else to start to open up, whether it's OCD or something else, if it gets somebody else to start talking about their story, then this is why we do it, right? So we're now going to go on to our 5-minute wonder, which is the awesome Emma Palmer. Emma's doing this incredible challenge, and I'm not going to do it a disservice. So, Emma, the virtual floor for kind of 5 minutes is yours. Go and wow everyone. And we're going to put all the links, by the way, to all of these things, so you can support Emma in the chat feed. So, Emma, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Dave, as well. It's lovely to see you both. Lovely to see everyone else. So I guess I'm really here to ask for your support, aka money, because I'm running the New York Marathon in November, on November 5th, and it'll be my first ever marathon. And yeah, I'm very excited, but I'm a little bit nervous as well. I'm running for an organisation called Darkness to Light, and as someone who works in the equity and inclusion space, I'm constantly reminded of what injustice looks like. I'm constantly reminded of what inequity looks like. But I'm also reminded of what aspiring for a better world could look like too. And because my work is centred all about the human experience and the rights of people, safety and welfare of children and young people everywhere is something that I think we should all be concerned about, because I want to live in a world where every child feels safe. So I'm running on behalf of Darkness to Light because I believe in their mission, and I want to live in a world where, as a society, we consciously choose to keep children safe. So Darkness to Light, they're a non-profit and they're committed to empowering adults to prevent and end child sexual abuse. And I guess their work is guided by the vision that we can live in a world free from that, where every kid can grow up happy and healthy. And their belief is that adults have the responsibility to protect children. So they have a presence in all 50 states and 115 countries, and they work to end child sexual abuse. So all the money that is raised will go towards their program, Stewards of Children. And this is a program that is designed to educate and give adults the right tools to respond to any allegations of this nature, because we know they're complex, we know they're really difficult, and if you don't have the right tools and understanding to respond, more children are at risk of harm and unsafe. So it's a 2-hour video-based program. They go out and train folks that work directly with children, and hopefully afterwards you know how to recognise, react and respond appropriately to any allegations and investigations around this type of allegations. So the ultimate aim is really just to protect children. So as I said at the start, I'm here to ask for your support. If you would like to donate, I would appreciate it no end. Only donate what you can, if you can. I'll put the link in the chat. Yeah, even if you can't donate, it would be great if you could share the page and just kind of drum up some support, because I need to raise $2,500 by November, and we're 56% the way there, which is really great. So thank you.
And how's your training going?
Yeah, really well. I'm training 4 times a week, and I'm sticking to the plan rigidly. But yeah, it's going well.
Amazing. We've already put the link into the feed for your Just Giving page, so that's kind of there already. We will be making a donation from Includability to you as well, and we'll continue to kind of share the story and perhaps kind of get updates from you on your training, and so that we can continue to kind of raise awareness. But it's an incredible charity. And as again, Emma's a massive part of Includability and kind of the community. So do reach out to her directly to kind of get to know what she does, both as a person, as a role, but also about this event as well. And I guess kind of last but by no means least, Victoria's probably somebody that we've been speaking to at the very, very beginning of Includability. So 2 and a bit years ago now. So again, she's kind of been a big part of kind of our journey, but strategically placed nicely behind her. You'll probably see as you look over her left-hand shoulder. She's the founder of Ginge, Unhinged, but also the proud author of My Menopause, My Journal, My Rules, which she'll probably show you a copy of, and we're going to put a link in there as well. So Victoria, for the next 10, 12 minutes, the virtual floor is yours. Over to you.
Cool. Hey, everyone. So thanks for the intro. Before I tell you a little bit more about what I do, I guess I'd like you all to imagine that you are standing here on Earth looking up at the sky, and you see this planet. It's kind of in the atmosphere. It's close enough for you to see and be aware of, but far enough away for you to kind of not be too concerned about it unless it starts edging ever closer. And this planet that you look at is, it's populated. It is populated actually mainly by women, not all women, but mainly by women. And at certain times, these women kind of get transported there in these little invisible rockets. And some of their journeys to that planet is over a number of years, and they get there, and some of them are thriving and doing really well and kind of stepped into this fierce wisdom. Some of them are there and they've not even realized that they've kind of got there. They've kind of just breezed it through. And for others, their journey to that planet is a little bit more difficult. They might experience some things physical, mental, and they're kind of fumbling around, feeling a little bit unsure of what's happened and why they're there. I found myself on that planet at the age of 33. I woke up there one day, and looking around, I didn't feel like I recognized anyone that was my vibe. I was pretty young, and I had come from this other world of a lot of pain. I was covered in all of these scars and trying to heal from a life-changing operation. But yet suddenly I was in this completely different world. And I just looked around thinking, what am I experiencing? I started to feel a lot of different things happening in my body, and probably more significantly in my mind as the time went on and I kind of tried to journey around this new place that I was in. I started to lose myself. I became very anxious of where I was. My confidence dropped. I became paranoid. And I got to a place where my moods were so bad, my rage was so awful, that I thought that even in this new world, I probably don't need to be around. And at a few times tried to get off of the planet that I was now on. I searched around in this new world for 2 years, not really understanding what was going on with my mind and my body, trying to just fumble through. And I came across a person there who was willing to help me. And when I asked this person what on earth was going on with me, where was I now? What was this new world I was in, this new planet of all these women that seemed a lot older than what I was? This person turned around and said, "You're in menopause." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, surgical menopause. Here you are. You've been here 2 years. What's going on?" And my first response was, why did nobody warn me? And as I then went out and decided to look even further with a kind of new lens on, I realized that I wasn't the only one in surgical menopause and younger. There were teenagers on this new planet that equally didn't know what they were doing. It wasn't just a world of women of a certain age. There were transgender people on this planet too. And the more that I explored, the more that I realized that actually this whole new world that we were looking at from Earth, kind of there, but not too worried about until we got to, that there was no correlation between what was really happening and kind of those of us just waiting for it to happen in the future. So I decided to start talking about my experience and sending messages back to the kind of normal world, I guess. And I did that through creating Ginge Unhinged. I started talking about my mental health and how it affected me. And I started talking about hysterectomies and surgical menopause and how menopause shows up, not just for women going through it in perimenopause, which is the part before, but how should be part of the inclusive conversation for all. And I did that by creating video content and then, of course, starting to write as well. And I guess I'm an author now. So I guess why is it important to think about menopause way before it's going to happen? And why is it important to think about menopause in the workplace, for example, whether you work in a small business or a large business? And I can go on and share some stats with you shortly, but I'd like to just, if we can, Dave, show a video as to why it's important.
Look at the concentration on his face.
I know.
Oh, Victoria, I'm so
share
sorry.
this.
I don't think I've got the link. Do you want
Oh,
to?
no,
Do you want to pop it in the chat to me?
It's on. Okay, let's see if I can pop it in.
You're wonderful. Bear with me. Victoria's
No
perfect.
worries.
This once again is my fault.
That's okay.
Honestly,
Don't worry. If we don't get to do it, then let me see if I can get it on here.
If we're unable to, then you can just put the link into the chat feed, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm just going to try and do that now and then see if we can do it. Okay, that's the link. Do I just press play? Will it play on the screen?
Victoria, you might
It'll
have to
take
just
us
share
there,
your
won't it?
screen, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it will
Okay,
come
let's
up.
see if
I'll
it'll
just share
share.
screen option. Brilliant.
I'm not sure. We tried before, didn't we? But yeah, it's not going to let me do it. Does anyone?
Well, it's Chaffy, so everyone can see it now.
Okay, so I will. I'll talk through some stats. So, for example, we know that by 2025, 1 billion women will be in menopause. And in 2022, Bupa did a study that 900,000 women, probably 1 million now, have left the workplace due to menopause. But interestingly, those statistics, like a lot of the statistics that you'll see in the media, and a lot of the statistics that kind of get shared, are actually only really looking at women between the ages of 45 and 52. Those statistics don't include anyone that's had hysterectomies. That doesn't include anyone that has gone through cancer treatment and into menopause. And it doesn't include anyone experiencing what we call premature ovarian insufficiency, which can start as early as teens. So it's really important that when we think about statistics, because we love them, right, if we're in business, but that we're also starting to think about who else is in our world around us that could be experiencing these symptoms. And the video that I wanted to share, and you can check it out after, is just the real reason why we need to speak about this. There's actually over 80 symptoms that are associated with menopause. And a lot of those are what I would call hidden symptoms that a lot of people are bringing to, walking through life or walking into the workplace with. And this was my kind of way of sharing these symptoms. And this is the human stuff that we're living with. And the interesting thing about this video was I put it up just over a week ago, I guess. And it's had, 1.5 million views, which I'm pretty, I'm gloating at. It's not viral, according to my kids, but it's had 150,000 likes. Somebody's made a blog of it in America. It's ridiculous how has related to people of all different ages, all across the world, in all different experiences. And when we think about those symptoms and how they're showing up, that's why it's really important to be really open to how we make adjustments with those around us, whether it's at work or at home. And for a lot of people, this isn't just a transition over a number of weeks. This is a transition that is over a number of years, sometimes decades. And for some people that have gone through it, like myself in surgery, it's actually lifelong. So we have to kind of change our viewpoint a little bit on how we think about it on a longer term accessibility point of view. So how do we do that? So really, just when you're thinking about anything, particularly in business or around you, is just, I always say, get your empathy goggles on and think about, who is this showing up for? Is it, how does it affect people that are in different cultures? How does it affect people in how they are advocating or having to advocate for their healthcare because they may experience medical gaslighting? How does it affect the families that they have? How is it affecting different ages and new people coming into your workforce? So anytime that you're working with anyone new, it's about thinking and putting your empathy goggles on anything you do, whether you're putting policies in place, whether you are thinking about communicating to these people, whether you are thinking about doing awareness days. It's really about having that inclusive lens, because it can be a really lonely place. That's what I found, and it still is sometimes a really lonely place to be. So what do I do? I guess. So I dance in my kitchen on TikTok. I connect with people and help them through numerous DMs because GPs are not trained fully in menopause. I know it's crazy, but it's not a mandatory module to do in healthcare, considering 50% of the population are going to experience it at some point. So I fill that gap and I make that bridge between that planet that I was talking about and kind of the world that we're in now. and in a really inclusive and fun way. I'm a writer, so I write a book. So here it is. My Menopause, My Journal, My Rules. Why a journal? Because journaling saved me at my worst. Writing cathartically, getting stuff out of my head, ripping and burning stuff saved me. And I wanted to bring that cathartic energy to the readers so that they really could feel empowered, that this isn't just a negative time, that it is a time to be really fierce and empowered and take action. And kind of that's what I've tried to do. And it was a real healing journey to do it too, writing it, illustrating it, packing it. Hey, Amy Polly, she packed a lot with me. And now sending it out across the world is insane. But I also have a strategic hat on my head too, and 20 odd years in a corporate background of trying to crush the taboo in the workplace and helping people again feel like this is an okay conversation to have, and it's okay to learn together and bring your networks together, and really be bold in asking the questions rather than just throwing an awareness day out there or a communication here and there. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. Ginge Unhinged. There you go.
Thank you. So I think going back to what you just said, where it's an okay conversation to have, I think it goes way beyond that. And actually, it's a vital conversation that we have. I think I've been in the incredibly privileged position where I've filmed a few times on kind of menopause for Jack, and therefore my level of research going into it and the amount of unknowns from my side and the myths and the misconceptions and every single person's journey is very, very different and very unique, and symptoms kind of show up in different ways. I think through life it's important to know, because by proxy we're going to be probably in contact with somebody that's experiencing it. I think as a business it's so important that you take ownership for it. What are you doing to support your employees? As a manager, what are you doing to make sure that you are tooled up, educated enough and knowledgeable enough to be able to support employees? And that's not through basing on assumptions. Actually get speaking to people that are experts in their field. There is no better experience than actually living through something, I guess. So if you are unsure, if you don't know where to start, which is absolutely fine, but not starting isn't fine. So if you want to kind of reach out, please do. I'm going to put a link into, we haven't actually filmed with Victoria, but we filmed with Michelle Heaton from Liberty X, who again went into kind of medically induced menopause at the age of 34. She talks about it kind of really openly, and the fact that, exactly as you said, Victoria, there was no conversation beforehand, there was no support afterwards. So she's really kind of learned on the job. So there's similarities to kind of that story, I guess. So I'll put the link to that in there. But I think this again goes to show that by getting 1.5 million views, by getting 150,000 likes, there is genuinely nothing more powerful than storytelling. And there'll be so many of us in these businesses, in all of our businesses, that have people that have their own stories. If we can provide a psychologically safe space where people feel okay to tell their stories, the amount of difference that will make, not just to an individual in terms of whether they want to come out, whether they want to talk, whether they want to be open, but actually even when it comes down to, if we're going to talk really crass, to productivity, if we look at kind of absenteeism, presenteeism, there's so much that we can do if we just have that psychological safe space and we actually invest in what we need to do to educate our employees. I think the link to the September ESG is already been kind of put in there. So please do kind of sign up to that, share it with your colleagues. Hopefully, as you all know, we've got the most incredible kind of supportive community here, and it's really, really informal, but extremely powerful. If there's anything that any of you need, any questions that you have for any of our guest speakers, whether that is Fiona, Shaun, Victoria, or Emma, or you want to be introduced because of the awareness days that are coming up throughout September, October, please just let us know. Get in touch with myself, Dave, James, Chris, whomever it is, and we'll make the introductions. Amy, lovely to see your child there make an appearance right at the end. But look, thank you ever so much for everyone coming. Thank you to our guest speakers. This has been recorded, so we'll kind of make sure that goes out as well, and you'll get notified when that does go. Anything that we can do to help, let me know. But continues to be amazing, and we will catch up with you at some point in September. All right.